From across the northern seas they came, the divine tribe of goddess Danu, the Tuatha Dé Danann. For 3 days and nights, an unnatural fog consumed all of Ireland, thick as wool and dark as the grave. When the mist finally lifted, the gods stood upon Irish shores, their black ships burning behind them in a display of absolute commitment. The gods bore with them 4 relics of unimaginable power, forged in the mythical cities of their homeland. From Phalias came the Lia Fail, the screaming stone that would shriek when touched by a true king. From Gorias, the unstoppable spear of Lugh that never missed its mark. From Findias came the sword of Nuada, a blade so sharp it could cleave through any armor, any shield. And from Murias, the cauldron of the Dagda, a vessel of endless plenty that could feed any army and satisfy any hunger. These were the treasures that would reshape the destiny of Ireland. The Bolg, Ireland's native people, met the gods' demand for half their island with defiant refusal. These earthbound folk, strong and proud, would not bow to otherworldly invaders. War became inevitable, and the very ground trembled with the approach of divine conflict. For 4 blood-soaked days, the first Battle of Moytura raged across the Irish plains. Divine magic clashed with mortal steel in a symphony of violence that shook the heavens. The earth ran red with the blood of gods and men alike. In the chaos of battle, disaster struck the divine king. Nuada, lord of the Tuatha Dé Danann, fell victim to a Bolg blade that severed his sword arm at the shoulder. The sight of their maimed king sent shockwaves through the divine army, for no imperfect being could rule the gods. The laws of the gods were absolute. No blemished being could wear the crown. Nuada, his divine perfection shattered, was forced to abdicate his throne. The victory that should have been sweet became bitter ashes in the mouths of the Tuatha Dé Danann. In desperation, the gods turned to Bres, whose mixed blood bridged 2 worlds, half Tuatha Dé Danann, half Fomorian. They crowned him king, believing his dual heritage would bring peace. But they had welcomed a viper into their midst, for Bres harbored the cruel nature of his giant kin. Bres revealed his true nature with each passing day, his tyranny growing like a cancer through the divine realm. He demanded impossible tributes, humiliated noble gods with menial tasks, and ruled with the iron fist of a despot. The golden age of the Tuatha Dé Danann withered under his reign. When the gods could bear no more, they rose in righteous rebellion against their tyrant king. Bres, seeing his power crumble, fled like a coward into the night. But his exile was not retreat. It was preparation for a war that would dwarf all previous conflicts. In his underwater fortress, Bres called upon his mother's people, the Fomorians, ancient giants of chaos and destruction. These primordial beings, older than the gods themselves, answered his call with savage glee. The seas boiled with their rage as they prepared for war. Meanwhile, Dian Cecht worked miracles of healing and craftsmanship upon the fallen king. With silver blessed by the gods themselves, he forged a perfect artificial hand for Nuada. Every joint, every finger moved with fluid grace, and the king was made whole once more. Nuada's restoration to wholeness meant his restoration to the throne, and the Tuatha Dé Danann rejoiced at their rightful king's return. But even greater healing was yet to come, for Dian Cecht's son possessed powers that surpassed even his father's legendary skill. Myac, young and brilliant beyond measure, looked upon his father's work and saw how it could be perfected. Through healing arts that bordered on resurrection itself, he restored Nuada's severed flesh, replacing silver with living tissue. The king's hand lived and breathed once more, but Myac's miracle ignited a terrible jealousy in his father's heart. Dian Cecht, consumed by envy that his son had surpassed his greatest work, committed an act that would haunt him forever. In a rage of wounded pride, he struck down Miak with his own healing blade. From Miak's grave sprang a miracle born of tragedy. 365 magical herbs, each one a cure for every ailment known to gods and mortals. His sister wept as she gathered them, memorizing each plant's power before Dian Sect scattered them to the winds in his continuing jealousy. Across the dark waters, the Fomorians assembled like a nightmare made manifest. At their head stood Balor of the Poisonous Eye, a giant so massive that mountains trembled beneath his footsteps. His single eye, when opened, could incinerate thousands with its deadly gaze, but fate had woven a thread of hope into this tapestry of doom. Lugh, master of all arts and skills, appeared at the Tuatha Dé Danann court seeking to join their cause. Unknown to most, divine blood flowed in his veins, for he was Balor of the Poisonous Eye's own grandson, destined to fulfill an ancient prophecy. The Second Battle of Moytura began with the fury of the apocalypse itself. Tuatha Dé Danann and Fomorians clashed in combat that reshaped the very landscape of Ireland. The earth split, rivers changed course, and the sky burned with the fire of divine warfare. In the midst of chaos, grandson faced grandfather in a duel that would determine the fate of two races. Lugh raised his sling, the same simple weapon that had felled enemies since time immemorial. Balor of the Poisonous Eye's deadly eye began to open, promising death to all who gazed upon it. Lugh's stone flew true, striking Balor of the Poisonous Eye's poisonous eye with devastating force. The giant's head snapped back, his deadly gaze now turned upon his own army. The very weapon meant to destroy the gods instead incinerated the Fomorian host, turning Balor of the Poisonous Eye's power against his own people. The Fomorian army crumbled into ash and ruin, their ancient power broken forever. Balor of the Poisonous Eye crashed to the earth like a falling mountain, and with him fell the last great threat to the Tuatha Dé Danann's dominion. Ireland belonged to the gods at last. For a time, the gods ruled Ireland in golden splendor, their magic flowing through every stream and stone. But across the southern seas, new enemies were stirring. The Milesians, mortal sons of Mil, carrying in their hearts a burning desire for vengeance against the divine usurpers. The Milesians landed on Irish shores with fury in their hearts and iron in their hands. Leading them was Emergen, a poet whose words carried power to rival any divine spell. As his feet touched Irish soil, he began to weave an incantation that would shake the very foundations of the god's realm. At the battle, mortal steel met divine magic in a conflict that would end an age. Despite their godly powers, the Tuatha Dé Danann found themselves overwhelmed by human determination and Emergen's reality-breaking verse. Queens and kings of the divine fell like leaves before the autumn wind. When the slaughter ended and divine blood had soaked the earth, Emergen stood as judge over two peoples. With wisdom born of victory, he divided Ireland itself. The surface world would belong to humanity, while the gods would retreat to the hidden realm beneath the earth. Manannán mac Lir, god of the sea and mist, wove his final great magic to protect his people's exile. The Feth Fiada, an enchanted mist of concealment, settled over the entrances to the underworld. Mortal eyes would see only empty hills and ancient stones, never suspecting the divine realm hidden beneath. In their subterranean kingdom, the gods held the Feast of Goibniu, drinking enchanted ale that granted them immortality and eternal youth. Though banished from the surface, they would endure forever in their hidden realm. Time meant nothing to those who had transcended death itself, but immortality in exile brought its own curse. Over the long centuries, the mighty Tuatha Dé Danann began to diminish, their godlike forms shrinking as their connection to the mortal world faded. They became the Aos Sí, the fairy folk, still magical, but no longer the titans they once were. The Aos Sí, though diminished, retained their supernatural powers and their ancient grudges. They would steal human infants from their cradles, leaving changeling substitutes in their place. These fairy children, with their otherworldly beauty and strange behaviors, served as reminders of the gods' continued presence. Wise mortals learned to appease the Aos Sí with offerings of milk and honey, leaving gifts at fairy rings and ancient monuments. They whispered prayers and avoided the mischievous spirits who led travelers astray on moonless nights. To this day, beneath the green hills of Ireland and within the ancient passage tombs, the Tuatha Dé Danann endure in their fairy forms as the Aos Sí. Their magic remains potent, their memories long, and their hatred for those who stole their kingdom burns as bright as ever in the underground realm below.